Hello, my name is Paul Driscoll. In our ERP presentation, you saw how the central accounting application handles quite complex bills of material and manufacturing requirements. But if you're not a manufacturing operation, or if you don't need complex bills and requirements planning, but do have jobs or projects which you want to schedule, and you want to know which do and which don't make money for you, then central accounting can still help you. So let's see how we might achieve that. Matthew and Son have been asked by a customer, Aztec Engineering, to quote for a new machine. This is a crimping line, and though this is a bespoke item, it's not too dissimilar from other items they've designed and produced in the past. So the very first thing we're going to do is actually create this particular item. First, the general details, then flagging the item as manufactured, we complete the manufacturing details. In this example, we're not looking at stock control and therefore are not interested in setting up components on the bill of materials. But we are going to set up a process routing so that we can plan this particular item through the various stages of its design and production. Here we've set up the resources as, in some cases, individuals, and in some cases, teams of individuals. So first of all, this particular item is going to be designed by designer B, and we estimate that that's going to take approximately 3 days. It will then go to a software programmer, who will, for the sake of this example, also take 3 days. Thereafter to one of the two production teams, and they were going to take 6 days. And finally, the installation and commissioning, which will take 2 days. Because in this example I'm only using the process routing so that I can subsequently plan this item through its various stages of production, I'm not interested in setting up any stock costs. So at this point I'm simply going to save the item. And this now becomes available to use in our quotation. And I can now confirm the general terms including the price, terms of payment, anticipated completion dates, and when I save and send that, I can include our general terms of trade. So that quotation now sits on our list of quotations. When we receive the purchase order from the customer, we can actually convert that quotation into an order, and again confirm that to the customer, complete with our terms of trade. That in turn sits on the sales order listing screen. Having now received the order, it would be appropriate to set up a project code for this particular crimping line. And that project is now added to the projects listing screen. So, back to our order. Again, we're not using stock control, cannot use the requirements planning module, so any purchase orders for materials for this particular project have to be raised manually. That's simply the purchase order listing screen, new order. Here we have an option. If we're going to be buying similar materials, or indeed components on a regular basis, then we may wish to set up specific stock code for each of them. In this example, I'm simply going to set up a generic stock code and use the description line to identify precisely what it is we're buying from a particular supplier. So again, new, this time a consumable item, because again we're not using stock control. So something like that. If we save that, that becomes available for use in the purchase order. So the completed details might look something like that. So save and send. And again we can print or email and include our terms of trade. And that order now sits on the purchase order listing screen. And when the supplier then invoices that particular item, we update the system with the invoice cost. Now you can see here that the invoice doesn't match the order value, and the system has registered that in red here, so we can in fact query that invoice if we wish before we submit it for processing. So whilst the buyer has been arranging materials for this project, the production department has been raising a works order and progressing the production itself. Here you see the production routing that we'd set up on the stock item, and if we create that works order, then we now have an opportunity to actually schedule it into our production processes. So this is the order we've just created, and if we simply click on it, the application will try and schedule that as best it can. The blue bars here represent capacity, so that's when these individuals or teams are available for work. The white area is not capacity, so basically from line to line here is 24 hours, and we can actually delete that white space to make things a little easier to read, and we can even zoom out so that we can get a better perspective on the plan. So here we have the order with designer B for design going on to the software engineer, production team B, and then installation team A. We can of course move these things around. That's the point of the scheduling screen. Here for example we might ask the installation team to work a little overtime so that they complete that order on the Friday there before the weekend, and of course we will be scheduling other things in and around these this particular item. For further details on the scheduling functionality of the application, then again you'll have to look at the ERP presentation. So once we're happy with that plan, we save, and that works order is now shown as planned, and we can in fact print a job card. And here we have it. This is what we're making. There are no stock requisition details because of course we're not looking at stock control at the moment, and we're not using bills of material. But what we do have here is a traveller document which dictates the start time and process time for each of the planned operations involved in producing the crimping line. So work has commenced on this particular project, and employees are now booking time against it. So for example, in this week, our designer John Baker has spent 30 hours on the crimping line project, and possibly 10 hours on something else. Okay, so if we now save and run that payroll and produce our payslip, we should be in a position to start looking at the project costs. So we can run the profit and loss account for the whole operation, and I'll be looking at the period from the beginning of August to the end of September, just a 2-month period. And you can see that we have purchases of £6,500 and wages of £660, no sales at this point. But importantly, we can isolate just the crimping line project. And there it is, of course, no sales there either, but we do have direct materials and we do have direct wages. And the materials, for example, is the invoice that we saw just a little earlier. Okay, so design is completed, and we want to invoice the first stage of our project. So at this point we're not interested in the subsequent stages, so dispatch an invoice there, and there in fact is our invoice. Again, we can print or email that to the customer, but if we now look at our profit and loss account, again initially for the whole business and then just for the crimping line project. We can also exclude any incomplete projects from the statement, and of course the crimping line is currently incomplete. So not surprisingly, again, sales revenue drops to 0, but there is some wages other than for the crimping project, as we saw when we ran the payroll. And as importantly, if we look at our balance sheet, and for consistency we'll look at that at the end of September, that's the, if you like, raw position for the whole business. But when we exclude the incomplete projects, we see that the application has now created project work in progress and deferred income for the incomplete crimping line project. So finally, just to assure you, there is actually the option here, should you so wish, to combine both the project accounting that we've been looking at in this particular presentation with full materials requirement planning. There would be nothing to stop you, should you so wish, to set up the components in the normal way so that you can both use this screen for your cost estimations, and of course in setting up the bills of material in this way you can then have the functionality of material requirement planning to generate your purchase orders. Again, for further details on that, you will need to look at the ERP presentation. So that concludes this particular presentation on project accounting and control, and thanks for your time. I hope it's been helpful.